Hello, good
Hi,
morning.
good morning.
How are you?
I'm well. It looks so sunny where you are.
Yeah, it's actually really beautiful. So I was like, I'm going outside. I'm gonna like sit and just absorb some sunshine.
I love that. Let's do a little self-care while we work.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm at that point of my life where like everything I'm doing has to involve a little bit of self care. The other self care thing I did this morning was I did not shower or get
Oh,
ready,
okay,
and that can be self care too,
absolutely.
right? Because you're like, it's fine.
As
We're all just gonna
it,
go.
it's something I tell people who are about to be new parents.
Oh, yes.
One of the things, if they ask, I don't give unsolicited advice, right? You know that saying, unsolicited advice is always
Oh,
criticism?
oh, I've never heard that. Yeah,
Yeah, I saw that recently and I was like, ooh, I need to think about that.
that's
Um,
powerful.
but yeah, you might not shower for days at a time. And that's okay. That's everybody.
You do
So,
the best you can. And sometimes self-care is taking a
yeah,
shower. It's it's like it's a being attuned to ourselves and being able to recognize what is the need. And for me the need was like my hair was curly enough from a speaking event I had last night. And so we're just going to be in our
yeah.
workout clothes and hopefully work out later today. That's the goal.
Well, my self care this morning was getting up earlier than I usually would.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure I dug into
Yay!
this because it just arrived yesterday. I just got my hands on
Oh
it
my
yesterday.
gosh, I'm so excited you got
Yes.
it.
So I wanted to make sure that I got up early and I could sit while my kids were still asleep, have some coffee, start
Love it.
digging into the book because we're going to chat about that today.
Totally.
But what I noticed was that I felt unhurried after feeding the kids breakfast, dropping them off at school.
Yep.
I felt unhurried. I stopped. I chatted with a couple of other moms, and I was noticing that uncharacteristically, I was not feeling like I gotta go. I've got an appointment today, and I have this because I got up earlier. So today, for me, upon reflection, that was self-care.
Smart move. I love it. I love it. So good. And then yeah, on a different day, it's like, no, I'm gonna sleep longer
Yeah,
because I need some more sleep. Yeah.
yeah,
It's attuning to yourself.
yeah.
How old are your kids?
My kids are 6.5 and almost 9.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're in the mix.
I'm right
I
in
have
it.
a 9.5-year-old and then twin 4.5-year-old. So
Well,
yeah.
and like, first of all, let's just pause for a moment and marvel at the fact that you're a parent of 3 kids, first of all, and them came pretty much one right after the other.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you're still forming complete sentences.
I mean, not all the time. It depends on the day.
Not only
It
forming
really.
complete sentences, but actually putting them really like beautifully into books for us, right?
Yeah.
So can I just like tip my hat to you?
Thank you. Thank you.
I can't
Oh,
imagine. I can't imagine twins. I know other folks who've got twins, but I remember when our daughter was about sometime in the first 4 months. I turned to my wife and I was like, I don't understand why I feel outnumbered. There's only one of her, right?
it is such a wild thing we're doing in being modern parents, in living in the world that we do with the levels of stimulation that we have, and trying to help little people navigate that world. And depending on your story and your journey, you know,
Yep.
it can be a lot. I mean, I don't know anyone
Yeah.
who would say, like, I don't know, parenting was easier than I thought. Do we know
No,
anyone who said that?
I mean, it really matters. Like, the resources that we have matter. Like, it matters how well resourced we are, both in terms of instrumental resources like finances. So if you can afford somebody to help clean the house, that's wonderful. That makes parenting a lot easier. But it was my girlfriend, who is in her 4th year of clinical psych degree PhD,
Oh, wow.
actually said this to me, and it made sense of that moment for me. That evolutionarily, our nervous systems actually expect a ratio of 4 to 1. So 4 pairs of eyes on each dependent child. That's actually how our species evolved, living
Wow.
in groups, like in a village or a clan or a tribe of some sort. So our nervous systems actually have the expectation that each dependent child will have 4 pairs of eyes on them. So an auntie, a grandparent, an older child, a cousin, somebody who's been adopted because there's no one to feed them or they lost their family, rock slide or something
Yes.
cataclysmic. That's what our nervous systems expect. Is that we're not doing this in our silos. We're not parenting in our silos. And
Yes.
it's a very foreign way to actually do parenting
Yes.
for our nervous system, because evolution happens over millions of years, not 50 years.
Yes. The social experiment of the single family, nuclear family idea, it's very new, and I would say it's also correlated with some real serious increases in mental health issues, because you're exactly right.
Yeah.
I like to say we are wired for attachment. We are also wired for community. So we're wired
Yes.
to have attachment relationships within community. And so
Yes.
it makes it trickier. And depending on how isolated you are, you know, you're going to have a different process of regulating your kids than if you have a lot of support. I'm like slowly trying to convince my sister-in-law and her husband. And then I had a friend, I'm like, we have a piece of land that we live on. And like, what if you build a house here and then you build a house there and we can all like, you know, I can go to Costco for both of us and then you can just raise your baby and then we can figure this out, you know, because I think it's in my nervous system to be like, we're supposed to be a community.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I tell coaching clients this all the time. If you feel overwhelmed, like so many of the, I'm sure with your clients this is true too, so many of my clients, so many of the parents feel like they're failing.
Yeah.
So like just yesterday on the schoolyard, I had 2 separate conversations with 2 different other parents. One of them was we were talking about kids and emotional literacy and our kids being able to name their feelings, talk about their feelings. My little boy is more of an internalizer. He's very articulate. He's very sort of verbose, but when something feels hard, he tends to internalize. My daughter's the opposite. Every thought and feeling is externalized for her. And so I have to parent them differently. I have to respond to them differently. So I have to coach my son a little bit on why it's important to talk about hard things. So that when it makes so much sense, I say this to adult clients too, other than our drive for connection, other than our need for connection, which I always say is our most primal need.
Yes.
Perhaps our second most important driving factor is the need to move away from what's uncomfortable. Away from pain, to move away from discomfort. We're wired to move away from pain. We're wired to look away or to pull our hand back from the hot thing. And emotionally, it's the same. So we're wired to, you know, push the feelings in if we've been socialized to do so.
Right.
To not look at discomfort, to not look at distress, to not look at other people's distress.
Right.
We have...
Well, I would say it depends on what our attachment experiences are. So, you know, if we have a repetitive experience with a caregiver who is able to stay simultaneously compassionate and calm, so I care about what you're feeling, but I also can still stay regulated in my feelings, then over time, the instinct actually is, and not over time, I should say this, from the beginning, the instinct is to seek support.
Yes.
So to seek regulation from other people when we have that pain. So yes, to pull away from the hot thing, but then to seek the arms of our caregiver in order to get healing and get care. And so what secure attachment is all about is us cultivating the type of relational experience that lends our children to want to run into our arms and then later on in life to other secure arms in order to get support when they're tender or distressed or overwhelmed or hurt.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, you know, that's, in some ways, that's the parenting journey for those of us. I also grew up with, you know, an environment of insecure attachment, like so many of my clients. I would say the majority of my clients, certainly. I don't know about yours, but that learned behavior of moving away from emotional discomfort is of course built upon, you know, insecure attachment of one form or another. And so, you know, one of the questions I wanted to ask you as we're talking about the book, I'm going to hold it up again. Incidentally, my daughter loved touching the cover.
Oh, isn't it so fun that it's got a sensory element?
It's got a sensory element.
I love
it. Dopamine.
Yes.
Dopamine.
Yes.
Right? You know, when I'm working with clients and even just having these conversations with other moms yesterday on the playground, when I start talking about, you know, the ways that I talk to my kids, I coach my son to gradually, while respecting his boundaries about not wanting to talk about hard things, also, yay, Patty ordered the book, thanks, Patty. To also say to him, when we talk to someone about something that feels hard, we of course have to touch those hard feelings. If we felt embarrassed, or if we wanted to play with somebody and they said no and we felt rejected, it's understandable that we don't want to feel the hard feelings, and we don't have to feel them alone. That part's optional. And so when we talk about it, we don't have to carry the hard feelings in our hearts alone.
Yes.
Because our parent or another trusted person is holding it with us.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
So
absolutely. There's a huge difference between the way our nervous system responds to pain in isolation and pain in the presence of someone who cares for us.
He's a very big difference. Eli, he's like, I asked him after the first time, he sort of said, I don't want to talk about it, but I will, which was just sort of like end of last school year.
Oh, yeah.
I said to him after we talked, and we talked it through, and then we had a little break, and I circled back to him and I said, honey, can I ask you something? And he said, yeah. And I said, sweetheart, after, you remember when we had our conversation about the hard thing that happened at school today? He said, yeah. And I said, after we talked about it, did you feel the same, worse, or better than before we talked about it? And he said, I felt better, Mom.
Oh, it's so
right.
sweet.
And that's it. So, you know, as a relationship coach, you know, I work with so many couples where, you know, the female partner is doing so much, like 80% of the emotional labor, especially when there's dependent children. And I'm just like, you can imagine there's a voice in the back of my head going, not my son.
Yeah.
Sending out my little boy into the world to be a grown man who can't talk about his feelings. Like, I just like wanting, I remember holding him when he was an infant Eli, and he was just tiny, holding him over my heart and thinking, please God, how do I protect his softness?
Oh,
how do I protect this boy's softness in a world that still gives a lot of men the overwhelming message? Emotions are weak. That vulnerability is weak. That softness makes you vulnerable to harm.
Right.
And you're going to get hurt if you're soft. How do I counter, as his parent? How do I counter that message?
So did you get to
top of mind for me?
Did you get to the part of the book about my metaphor about calluses?
Not yet.
So chapter 4 is called Feelings Are for Feeling. And what I'm talking about is the importance of emotional intelligence and our process of being emotionally attuned to ourselves for resilience. So a lot of people think like, if I shut my feelings down, if I don't let my feelings get the best of me, then I'm going to be more resilient because I'm not going to get lost in my feelings. But the research is really clear that that's actually not true. You're actually more prone to addiction, to like low self-esteem, to depression and anxiety if you ignore what you feel. And so people are often responding to the opposite effect when they see people whose feelings are like really dysregulated and out of control. And they're like, well, we don't want to be that. No. The middle zone is where we want to be. And the middle zone is I can know what I feel. I can label what I feel. And I can bring it to other people. I can move my body. I can do the things that I need to do in order to get through the feelings. And then over time, those feelings become more tolerable to my body. So the metaphor I use in the difference between toughness and resilience is a callus. So I'm a runner and my feet are always super callous. They're just nasty. And I was talking with my sister about it. She works in the hospital. She's a CNA. She's about to be a PA. And I was showing her like cracks on my feet. And she was like, you really need to like make sure you get those fixed because the worst infections we see in the ER are through calluses in people's feet. Because if something gets up into that crack, your foot can't heal around it because that tissue is dead. It's dead tissue. So toughness is what happens when we cut ourselves off from what we feel and we kill off those emotional responses in our bodies. And it might make us not feel as much pain in certain circumstances, but if we really get injured, we lose the ability to heal because there's no blood flow between that dead tissue. So we really aren't looking to make our kids be hard and tough so that they get through life. We want there to be blood flowing. And so we want them to be able to make connections when they're in pain, because when they can make that connection, our heart flows to their heart, helps them heal, then they can get back in the game. And we want them to recognize that pain is a gift. Pain tells us where the injury is. And as long as we have people who can help us.
Pain tells us where the injury is. That's it. Like I want to just pause and just like, hold on, that's $1,000 worth of therapy in one sentence. Pain tells us what the therapy is and where the healing needs to be directed.
It's a messenger. Something's wrong. It's a messenger. Something's wrong. And so, you know, when our kids are young, I mean, I have to say, some days I'm tired. It's like, it is a lot because there is just so much emotion going on. But I know what I'm doing is I'm creating the intelligence they need. I'm creating the instincts they need so that as they grow older and something happens in their nervous system where they feel something, they can go, I know what this is. I know how to label it. I know who to reach for and how to reach for them. And I know it will pass. Right? If we teach our kid to shut things down, and I think what you're talking about around boys of this idea that, you know, they in specific need to be tough, we're actually just making it harder for them to be resilient. And they're not going to know how to utilize their close relationships. So yeah, our goal is resilience. Right? And I think everybody can get on board with that. I don't think any parent would be like, I don't want my kid to be resilient. No, you want your kid to be resilient. And if you want them to be that, they can't.
Yeah. Well, and me, Sue Johnson made this point, I think, so well in her early work in Hold Me Tight, that regulation is not repression. Emotional regulation is not repression. It's Like it was so, I remember reading that and going, yes, right? Because it's like, no, that's not, you know, she highlights in the introduction sort of a soft critique, but it's very clear to me. She's saying there's sort of two myths, two harms that have sort of filtered down from conventional psychology of years past into the general public. Number one, a well-adjusted adult doesn't need other people.
Right.
It's like, that's absolutely not true. Adults need secure connections every bit as much as children do, but you know, in some ways for different reasons. Number two, that a regulated or a well-adjusted adult controls their emotions. Yeah. But what we think of as control is actually repression. But what we're seeking and what we're trying to recover, because I see this with clients, where I'm not trying to give you something new. When you were very young, you knew how to express your feelings, and you did so without hesitation. Unless until the world got into your mind and your heart and told you that that wasn't okay, or you were too much, or we just didn't know what to do with you. Those kinds of things for like the highly sensitives. All of those kinds of scenarios. It's her critique there was, I thought, so on point. That yes, of course, like, regulation is not repression. Yes. Right. And even like, I even say to clients, like being regulated as a parent, like I'm a solo parent now, Eli. My kids and I lost their mama to cancer about 4.5 years ago. So I'm doing it solo. I'm doing it with kids who've been through a catastrophic loss. And of course, my own loss, of course, is catastrophic.
I'm like, do we need to pause for a minute? Because I'm just going to be sad with you.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And so I think about your work. I think about attachment all the time, because as I say to my kids, because mama's not here, I have to make all the mistakes for two parents. Right? I get to make all the mistakes for two parents. And so as attachment parents, as people who are fans of attachment parenting, and now what we would call now attached parenting, and I love this, make attachment parenting and attached parenting in the book. I loved how you contrasted what you're proposing in the book with the work of Dr. Sears and others who've come before you. But there is a difference between attachment parenting and attached parenting, and Eli's book, please go get the book and like review it. Right? It is so for those of you who are watching, it is so important for authors, especially in the first week or so when their book comes out, to get positive reviews so that more and more people will hear about the book. It will get more exposure. And so more and more parents will be able to actually use these tools that are in here to create secure attachment with their kids, whether they're littles or whether they're teens or whether they're grown children of baby boomers like some of my clients. It's never too late, right?
No, it's never too late. It is never too late. I love that. Well, okay, what is a question that you would want to ask me in your own journey? I mean, you obviously know a lot. You know a lot, but is there anything like from the book or around your journey or your process before we go? I just want to make sure that you know.
That's really thoughtful of you. And I want to, before I answer your question, I want to say to the folks that are watching, if you're picking up on how just incredibly thoughtful and warm and caring Eli is, I promise you it comes through in the book. Right? So those of you who found Eli's work like I did through social media, through video content, where you can very clearly see that Eli really is a person who walks her talk and believes the things that she's saying, believes the strategies that she's advocating, that your warmth comes through in the book, Eli.
I'm so glad. That makes my heart so happy to hear. Because you never know, when you're writing, you're like, is this sounding like this? Do I sound, condescending? Do I sound like too esoteric? But well, I mean, my heart is here so much.
Yes, it is. And it's so hard to walk that line for me as a coach, possibly, I don't know, for you as a therapist or as somebody writing a book, to walk that line where we're trying so hard not to make people feel bad about their parenting.
Yes.
And this is what I was seeing in the playground is I was talking about emotional literacy and, different words for different feelings. And the other mom's like, oh, I think I'm behind. Immediately she went to, I'm behind.
Oh.
My kid's behind you. And then 10 minutes later, I'm talking to another parent who's, got a kiddo who's got some struggles around being the smallest kid in the class and that being really hard and not wanting to be in a 4-5 split where she'll be even smaller than the older kids. This family is sort of working with a counselor to support their kiddo, but the kiddo's not opening up to the counselor. It's like, so the counselor's like, so how are you doing? They're doing some play therapy, and the kiddo's like, fine, right? And so then I'm saying to her, I said, well, it sort of goes back to her developing that comfort to talk about her things with you, and then she will start to be able to, as this skilled counselor builds rapport with your daughter, get her to open up there with the play therapy, like real play therapy.
Yes.
And so for me, I mean, there's so many pieces of this, Eli. Like I'm a solo parent to two littles. I am in a relationship, as I mentioned, with a partner who lives. I'm in Vancouver. She's in Victoria.
Okay.
She's a clinical psychologist. She's starting year 4 right now, and then 5th year, that full internship year. So we geek out about attachments.
I love.
we geek out about trauma, and I don't say that lightly, but it's like having a partner, as I did with my wife when she was alive. She was a naturopathic doctor. To be able to talk with your partner about these things is so powerful. And so my wife and I were, you know, fans of attachment parenting, and she would have read this book and recommended it to patients. Absolutely. So I share your observation. It's not a criticism, it's an observation that many of the books on parenting, which have tremendous value. I was reading Shefali Sabari before we had our first child.
Love it.
You know, The Conscious Parent, and that book is incredibly valuable. I recommend it all the time, but most of my clients want something that's like, no, when your kid is like swinging from the chandelier, like so many orangutans, like what do you do? What's step 1, step 2, step 3? Just give me the steps. And so I share that observation that the book that you have written, there's so many books on parenting, but the reason why you want to read this book is because Eli has boiled down all the research. So you have distilled decades of study, your own study, and the decades of research that you have studied. You've distilled many decades of knowledge production into however many pages the book is, but made it very practical.
Yeah.
I'm guessing your clients are the same as my clients. They want something practical. They want strategy.
Well, we need both. So, I mean, I think that's the thing. Like, if someone gives us a direction for our heart, but no actions to take, well, that is overwhelming, because we need those two things in tandem. So for me, I wrote this book so my hope is that it hits you so hard in the heart that it helps you grab a hold of all of the things I offer for your head. You know, like that you can go, okay, I understand why I'm doing this. Now, what do I say? And there's scripts and there's tips and there's all the things in there, because it's like, you know, this is hard. And if you didn't grow up with it, it's really confusing. You know, if the only example you have is someone who like raged at you or shamed you or just ignored you or told you to look on the bright side, you know, no, that's not it. But like, what is it? Because I'm not supposed to let my kids run the zoo, but I also don't want to put them in cages. So how does this work? I'm not really sure.
Where's the space in between the cage and the zoo? The animals zoo, right?
Exactly.
One of the people who's watching, Patty, commented she loved that you acknowledge, hey, as speaking for yourself as Eli, I'm a white woman. My reality is not necessarily the same as yours. I appreciated that also. She said that she felt like you did a great job making minorities like herself. So people who are, you know, either racialized people or people from other groups like neurospicy people. I have ADHD, I'm neurospicy, but also queer parents, non-binary parents. I fall into both of those categories. So
I'm so
my kids
glad.
have
That makes me so happy. Just because that is so important to me. I mean, I've been around long enough, you know, I'm in my 40s now, to know that there's a lot I don't know, and that I live in a very particular experience. And so, and as we look at research in general, research tends to be skewed in the direction of the dominant group, right? So, and I think I wanted every parent to feel seen and known, and to have that sense when they were reading that their story matters, and that if you're reading my book and you're like, yeah, you're missing this big piece. I mean, as like one very easy example, it's like, you know, you're a Black parent in America and you're raising a Black child, specifically a Black male child, and like you're having to navigate this process of your child being stereotyped as older than they are and more dangerous than they obviously are. They're a child. That is something that like is very unique in terms of your experience that I don't experience. And so I'm not going to speak to that. I'm not going to tell you how to do that, because I don't know how to do that. But I think it's so important to say in any context that we're talking about a topic as wide and complex as parenting, there's a lot I don't know, and you know it. And so coming back and trusting yourself and your community and your culture and your identity. And, you know, if there's stuff in the book that you're like, that will not work for me, I really hope you'll just be like, next. You know, take the pieces that really fit and make sense and leave the rest, because this is between you and your child, and nothing else matters in all of the world than that.
100%. And it's, again, it's take the pieces that work, leave the rest. Like if the book, you know, if there's parts of the book, like this book or any book, right? If there's parts that don't necessarily speak to your experience or aren't relevant to your experience, you've got a child with ADHD or a child who's, you know, autistic, and so certain things won't work with them. You know, take the pieces that work, adapt to them, try them, flex with them. You know, And you know, trust that part of you that knows your child, that's attuned to your child also.
And knows what you've already tried and knows all that. Okay, the one thing I do want to say, and then we have to go. But the one thing I want to say about neurodivergent children is people will often say, like, does this apply to neurodivergent children? And my answer is yes. Yes, 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 yes. In fact, even more so. And it is not like, does this apply in a way where if I do this, it's going to work easily? I don't say anywhere in the book that this is easy work. But when our child has a brain that is wired differently than the systems that they live in, they need our help feeling known and understood and regulated all the more. And so I think sometimes there's an instinct when a child is really struggling with behavior to like go, well, you know what, that stuff, soft stuff or whatever isn't going to work on this kid, you know, because we've got blah, blah, blah. It will either create behavioral change or it'll make the behavior worse, but it won't actually help that child develop. So our goal with children is to help them grow and develop. And so we want to always be trying to create positive relationships with them that they can utilize and be creative. You know, if you have a kid, I'm neurospicy. Who are we kidding? And I have a kid who's just recently diagnosed with sensory processing disorder, and there will be a journey for her that is different than her siblings. My other sibling, the other two are highly sensitive, so we're all probably neurospicy. But her particular journey, I'm gonna have to be creative. We're gonna have to figure it out. There may be like, you know, we're gonna have some IEPs in place. We're gonna be doing whatever. But does that mean I shouldn't continue to offer her attunement, support, and understanding? No, she needs that all the more, because she's going to experience feeling different in the world.
And then it goes back to what we started talking about at the top, Eli, about the importance of like how resourced we are as parents when we're trying to parent in our silos in the so-called nuclear family model.
Yes.
It doesn't apply to me as a solo parent, and I don't know that it actually is the best and most ideal way to rear our young. That's a conversation for a whole different live.
Yes.
But you said about being internally resourced, like what resources do we have in terms of self-care? But the other side of the coin of self-care is community care.
Yeah.
And where are those circles of reciprocal care?
Yes.
Where are those circles of reciprocal care? I'm an introvert. My wife used to do the mommy small talk on the playground, and I would just kind of sit there and engage with kids.
Do it either.
After my wife passed away, Eli, I get over my hesitation about making small talk because it's not my favorite thing. But that mom network has saved me over and over again, Eli. Whether it's been like, I need to get my kid tested. Is there a testing center on this side of Vancouver? Do I have to go all the way downtown and deal with parking there? All of those kinds of things. You know, whether it's, you know, sometimes it's birthday party invitations and what can I get your kiddo for their birthday? But sometimes it's, you know, I'm really having a hard time. My husband's been away on business. How do you solo parent, Erin? I'm drowning. Right? And it's those circles of reciprocal care where we have somewhere, just like our kids do, have somewhere to take it. Yes. Where can we go for support? Where can we go for comfort? Yes. Which of our mom friends can we sort of put our head down on their shoulder? One of mine just dropped her kiddo off high school, private school. He's in his tie, he's in his uniform. She's like, I just dropped my son off. And I looked at her and I was like, how's your heart? Yeah. She's like, I'm just trying really hard not to cry. Oh. Right? And it's just that question, how's your heart today?
Yes, yes, yes. Like, I mean, that's all that matters.
Right?
That's all that matters. And that's what we're doing with our kids.
It is with the mom.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Validate, empathize, affirm. Validate, empathize, affirm, rinse and repeat.
I love that. I love it. And I love your heart. And I'm so glad you're out in the world taking care of people and taking care of your kids. And I like your brain. You got lots of brain happening in there. Thank you for having me and having this conversation and sharing about my book. And yeah, just so glad you're here with us.
I almost wish it was pocket size so I could just put it in my pocket for those mom conversations and go, hey, pick this up. Right? Maybe I'll just take a screenshot of the cover and just start texting.
I love it.
There you go.
I love it.
Share this on the playgrounds. Share it in your mom and dad and parent networks. For all the folks, this book is so valuable. It's going to give you so much help in knowing what to do and how to do it. Because I want to say this as a final thought for everybody who's watching who's a parent. We all have moments when we feel like we're failing. I have those moments like weekly at least. But we're not failing. We are sometimes flailing.
Oh, love this.
And this is the life raft. This is the life raft to grab onto when you feel like you're flailing, right? It's okay that you don't know. It's okay that you feel overwhelmed. That's all of us, right? It's not because you're a failure. There's something you should know that you don't. right? This is support too. This is part of community care, right? It's sharing around these resources and giving them to other people. If you know a mom that can't afford it or a dad that can't afford it, pick up a copy and just leave it in their mailbox with a note saying, hey, a little gift from my family to yours. Make sure your public libraries are getting this book. Your public libraries, your university libraries, talk to your parent advisory councils, your PTAs, your Girl Guide groups, your Boy Scout groups. Get the books in the hands of the after-school care workers, the daycare workers, so that the people who are also with our kids as caregivers when we're not there have these tools, right?
Thank
So
you.
spread the word, everybody. Eli, thank you so much for doing this work. This work is a significant, big size rock in the pond of intergenerational trauma.